Hello and welcome to another episode of Supercoach Insider. My name is Chris and it is the third part of my January team series and I've gone a bit crazy. The preseason is well and truly full in swing. We're now starting to get reports back from intra-club matches and training reports and a lot more injury front news. Injuries are popping up. We're finding a little bit more out about different players. So wow, we're yeah. Also, we're doing some heavy research into some players as well. We're about to start our team series podcasts, which will be released probably sometime next week. We start recording those pretty soon. They'll coincide with the launch of the SuperCoach app to the general public. So right now, of course, really only the SuperCoach Plus subscribers or SuperCoach Gold have access to the app. Usually around Australia Day is when they will release the app to the general public for everyone to go into the team picker. So and launch the new season. So once that happens, that's when we will drop the new content for the team by team, so that we get maximum exposure for those podcasts. But looking forward to it. Yeah, lots of info. We've gone to town with the stats this year. So yeah, definitely those are the ones that you want to be catching as much as possible. All right. Now, I'm not going to lie. This team, I actually love it. I love it, okay? Structure-wise, it's still very, very, very sound. Rookie-wise, in terms of who we've got there, is very sound. But I've gone a bit left field with some of the selections, and you have to bear with me because it does look a little strange when you sort of first go into it. But I will explain all my selections at the moment. I'm really confident about this style of team, but we'll see how we go. Now, I suppose first things right off the bat, something that's not changing is Tom Stewart is still not coming out of my team. Hasn't moved all preseason. I don't see a reason to move him out. He's going to be D1 for the foreseeable future, and there's no one really, in my opinion, that is challenging him in my team. So he's still locked there, number one. Number two's changed. So for the first time in this season, I need to free up a bit of cash. And I've actually removed Jordan Dawson, and I'm going a little bit cheaper in defence. I'm going straight to D2 Nick Dacos. So about 500k there. Couple of reasons why. I'm trying to limit the amount of expensive players I have. So there's been some information that's dropped in regards to the magic number with the potential of higher priced starting players falling more if they have a poor start to the season. I'm not saying that Dawson is more liable to have a slow start to the season, but with the magic number being higher this year, and I will do actually a podcast on this, what it does mean is that those more expensive players, if they do have a poor start, will drop more cash quicker than in previous seasons. So, and also conversely, if you get a hot start, and you're a lower price player, you will go up in cash faster. So some important things to note there, especially when looking into round 3 trades and looking into some flyers, there is a little bit more cash to be made on the on that end, but also more cash to drop. So if you've got a guy that has dropped 2 poor scores and is 600k plus, you may want to jump off that train because he will plummet in cash. So there's a couple of things. So therefore, I'm going with a little bit more value. Obviously, this is effectively titled the Mid-Price Madness podcast because that essentially is what it is. And not all mid-prices, but guys that I think really, maybe we call it the value team, because all these guys that I've selected as premiums are definitely value. And with the way that I've gone, I've now been able to slot in 13 premiums that I'm hoping that will be in my final side. Now, Dacos is there at the moment. Again, it'll be him or Himmelberg. I really like Dacos. Obviously, his back end performance was very, very good. He had a 9-game stretch where he averaged 112. And what I wanted to hear from the preseason reports was that his role hasn't changed. Now, at the moment, that seems to be the case. And what he really had was, let's call it 60, 70% of time on halfback or pushing up to a wing, and then some time on the ball. And that's what I want. I don't want to see that alter because his ability to rack up the ball behind the ball is fantastic. He's also taking kickouts and getting those extra possessions, and that's how he was scoring a lot of his Supercoach. What I don't want to see is him go into the midfield and then only rack up 23, 24 touches a game. I'm not necessarily sure that that's likely to happen, but from the training reports at the moment, he's absolutely just killing it behind the ball and then moving through midfield as well. So don't think his role's changed too much over this preseason, which is good news for anyone that's looking at Dacos, because he can definitely average over 100 as a defender quite easily. And I'm tipping him to be somewhere between 105 to 110 this year if he can maintain that role. Also to note is that earlier in the season last year, he actually did have an ankle injury and was playing through it. So over a period of about 6 weeks where his scores dropped off as a rookie, and a lot of people, including myself, jumped off, he was actually playing injured, and it was recognised by the coaches that he was injured, but he just managed to pull up for the game, so they kept playing him. So definitely one to be aware of. And I still think that Dacos is a very good selection and obviously at a very valuable price. Now, moving on to the next one, another one that I'm really keen on at this stage because of a role change late last year, and that's Ed Richards. So last year, I believe it was from round 17 onwards. So what role he was playing was winger, half forward, and a winger that pushed forward. He moved to a half-back wing role. So he still played a little bit of wing, but obviously went as a defensive side winger and was a lot of the time the spare man in defence. And I think that role may continue. We'll see how we go early in the preseason, but so far with reports that Caleb Daniel is still playing midfield, that bodes well for his defensive scoring. Now, he did all this with virtually no kickouts, but he averaged in those games just shy of 100. It was 99.8, I believe, in those games that he moved back into that different role. So there's a lot of value, a lot of meat on the bone at 460k. And if he somehow snags kickouts and bumps his average up 5 to 10 points per game, then he will be one that everyone will be crying out for because of his price, his value, and everything in between. So I actually don't mind. He's the only real one now that sort of popped up, outside of that Himmelberg and Dacos into that range that still technically would be a premium, so keeper range for me. There are obviously some other ones that are cheaper mid-pricing selections, and I've actually gone completely cold on the mid-prices in this line because the rookies are looking pretty good. So guys that I've looked at and it's sort of been in and out of my team last couple of weeks, Elliot Yeo, so the training reports on him are fantastic at the moment. Hunter Clark, he did an interview the other day where he's rumoured to get more mid-time and he wants to be pushing towards midfield. So those two are very hot on my radar, and we'll be watching further in the preseason to see how they track. They're still sort of in with a shout. Bose, haven't heard much from Geelong yet, from any training reports. Haven't heard anything about Bose really, and that's a little bit worrying. By this stage you should be getting some fluff pieces on this guy who they got for peanuts, and he's going to slot straight into the midfield and blah blah blah. Haven't heard blip. And I've asked some very passionate Geelong fans out there to give us some sort of update, and nothing yet. So at the moment, I've cooled on that fourth spot there as a mid-pricer, and I'm going straight for the rookies. And the first one is Goda. So the GOAT himself. So again, from North Melbourne, 192k, defender mid. All reports at the moment, he's flying across half-back and just racking up possessions at will. Will he be in the best 22 is the question. However, I do think that I don't think that they can run with Zeeble in defence again. So I think there is a spot for Goda in that back six. Now, also of note, Taron Thomas, which was also floated into my side occasionally in the last couple of weeks because he's been playing a half-back role. What's going to happen with him? So was done drink driving, so he's got a few off-field behaviour issues. And generally what will happen out of this is that he'll get some sort of suspension from the club, and it'll be imposed by the players, and the club will give him, 2, 3, 4 games, whatever it might be. He's also in a nude texting scandal that's happening. It's all going wrong for Taron Thomas at the moment, and it's been 6 months of this. He's kind of
Hello, everybody. Welcome in. My name's Trevor Lane.
I don't know what's happened there. Sorry, YouTube. He's kind of the Degoe of North Melbourne. So, you'd think that they would probably slap a fine and a suspension on him. How many games that is, I'm not sure. But that does open the door for someone like a Goda to just jump straight into the 22 And if he doesn't skip a beat, then it's going to be hard to drop him because he's playing very well in the preseason. Now, another preseason report, rookie that's absolutely flying on the track is Ruben Ginby. Ginby, I think it is how I pronounce it, maybe Ginby. But by all reports, Jeremy McGovern was absolutely blown away by how prepared he is, how professionally he is, his size and frame and body. For a first-year rookie to just come in and just absolutely tear up like he has, Jeremy McGovern's just given him absolute praising. And there's obviously space down there. Now, the rumour is he's more of a midfielder, or they look to see him as more of a midfielder, but he could play a bit of a dual role off halfback as well. So I'll be interested to see how he plays, but I think that there's probably a spot for him right now in that West Coast 22. So we'll see. But right now, he's got on my field at the moment with the glowing reports from him. And the last defender rookie at the moment, even more praise than this guy. And I think that he's probably locked in. I think he starts round 1 for the Hawks, and that's Josh Weddle. 130k defender, can't really go wrong. Again, he's going to get some cheap possessions in that back line. Good user by foot, contested as well. I've heard nothing but good things about Weddle since his junior days, and I'm looking forward to seeing him in action. They obviously were very hot on him in the draft as well. So, definitely one that I am keen on 100%. And on the Pine, now, I'm still going with, these are interchangeable at the moment, but there is a lot of depth here. I've got Chesser here at the moment. Again, he hasn't started back in full training yet, but there's been 100 reports about how awesome he is, how they're really keen to get him involved. So if he does get a start and it's early, then that's going to be fantastic for him. He could just be a placeholder, but at this point, I'm just going to hold Chesser there. You could also have Charlie Dean there, and I've gone with Wagner. Now, again, Wagner, so I was tearing it up in the intra-club that they had the other day. However, he did come off with a hamstring injury, or actually the visible, the boundary riders, etc., said that he came off clutching at his hamstring. No report yet on whether that is an actual injury or if it's just some awareness. But we'll see how that goes. But again, Wagner is someone that I think most certainly can start round 1 if he gets a good run at the preseason and if he's not injured. So I do like him, and I also don't mind the old the defensive mid, the dual player position here that we've got on the Pine as well. Now moving into the midfield, not much has changed. I'm lying, a lot's changed. I actually went without Clayton Oliver for about an entire week, which is pretty crazy. Again, mainly because of the magic number issue, but I've gone back with him because I still think that he's probably going to be the best captain option, and you're going to want to have him. Not only that, he's going to be so highly owned that not having him is super risky. If he goes big on because he's a captain option, and people throw a VC on him or a C on him, and you don't have him that week, you're really dropping behind the 8 ball. And I just don't know if my risk tolerance is that high. So I'm still going to go with him at the moment. And I actually had Jack Steele for a few weeks. But rumour is that Jack Steele's actually not back training. And I watched the George's pod on Fantasy Take the other day, and he said that there's been no news of Jack Steele actually returning to training yet, and there's no news of if he's injured or excuse me, what the go is there. So a little bit frustrating that there's really lack of information out there, because he's obviously one that can rival in any of the top positions in Supercoach, but he kind of needs to be healthy. And last year we saw that without a healthy preseason and with an injury-riddled season as well, he really only managed to get 109, I think, or 110 average, which is fine. But at his price, that's where they're there for. You're only really picking him for a value selection that can go 120 plus. You're not picking him at 605k to average you 110. There's no point in that. There's heaps of guys that can probably make that mark that are going to be of more value. So still going with Bont here. That hasn't changed. Something that might. So there was some ice on Rory Lobb's ankle in their intra-club. So I think that if he gets injured, then you might see Bont more forward. But so it hinges on. Does it hinge on Lobb? Maybe. I'm not sure. We want to see Bont as a centre bounce mid. We want to see him in there as much as possible. to get those really big scores. Lob was said by the club to be very minor, and so not too worried at this stage, but just keep an eye on it because I think that Lob is important to their structure, and this year important to Bont scoring as potentially the number one Supercoach player. So here's where it does change a little bit. So out goes LDU. I'm worried about LDU scoring. No, I'm not worried about LDU the player. I think he's going to have a fantastic year. I just don't know where his Supercoach scoring sits. Cunnington's come back and there's been a few glowing articles about how he's just going to slot straight into the midfield alongside co-captain now Jai Simpkin and LDU. And I agree with that. I think he is going to slot straight in there. But how much is that going to impact LDU's scoring ability when you've got a very, very good extractor there in Ben Cunnington taking up some of those points? I'm on edge and I just want to see it. So therefore, I'm not going to take a punt on a guy that I'm not 100% sure is going to be able to achieve at least 110 average, which is what I expected LDU to return. So here, I've actually gone for the value option, and Tom Green's still in my team, obviously. Again, a guy that I think can go 110 plus this year quite easily if he gets that role. And I think he will get that role. So until proven otherwise, Tom Green is going to be in my team. And the other one that hasn't moved, of course, is Tom Mitchell. So still glowing reports again about Mitchell in training. Has had an absolute blinder of a preseason. I actually follow him on TikTok and he posts all of his workouts. Man, AFL players do a lot of work and a lot of rehab work that you just don't see. And I'm super impressed with Tom Mitchell's dedication. He's still only 29, Tom Mitchell. Another surprising stat that I found out the other day is that he's still quite young, and he's killing it in the preseason. So someone who's going to be playing absolute, maximum mid-time minutes, maximum mid-CBAs, has proven as a Supercoach performer before. I just want a 110 out of him, but he could go bigger. And I wouldn't be upset about it, obviously. But 110's kind of where I think now. I was saying 105 earlier, and I think that's probably his floor. But yeah, his ceiling's probably, let's say 115 conservatively. So 110's what I'm thinking, but yeah, 115 ceiling. All right, so it starts to get a bit interesting here. So I've still got Hopper in here at M5, so a little bit lighter in midfield than some, but not necessarily. So Hopper's obviously still going to be value. He's going to be a great selection. I'm not looking to him to be a keeper at all. I don't think he's ever going to be, especially in Richmond's system. But he's going to be a centre bounce mid. He'll probably average somewhere between 90 to 100. I'm thinking more on the lighter side of that, maybe 90, 95. So he's definitely not going to be a keeper, but he'll make you enough money. He'll get you up to, say, 480 to 500K. And an easy to Uber, one down, one up to an Uber premium. And that is the plan with old Hopper. And particularly with this magic number, if he goes hot early and has a few really good games, you could see him spike 100K really, really quickly. So definitely someone that I want in my team. And the other one, as painful as it is to admit it, and I really didn't want to put this on a podcast, but Dom Sheed looks to be playing inside midfield at the West Coast Eagles this season. Yeah, I was on a podcast recently saying, look, if he's not playing midfield this season, he's never playing midfield. So it's on. It's absolutely on. I think he'll be... the other news as well is Yo is looking to be playing more of that traditional half-back role. So he's not going to be taking that inside minutes. So who is the inside mids at West Coast? Well, it's Dom Sheed and it's Tim Kelly and it's whoever other rookie that they get coming in. Maybe Greg Clark gets some inside minutes in there. Maybe Jinby gets some minutes as well. They're going to be blooding some kids this year. So I really... obviously, Luke Shuey's there, but I mean, in and out every 3 weeks. Classic Luke Shuey. So yeah, I really like Dom Sheed in that role. Again, a guy that I can conceivably say might average, 90 to 100. But there is a chance where he goes slightly above that. He could be a guy that goes a 105 to 110 with the right role. Now, I'm not banking on that, especially in a team that's going to be probably bottom of the ladder. But at his price, again, he's the exact same price as Hopper. I think there's just as much reason to start Sheed as there is to start Hopper for the same reasons. So why wouldn't you? Yeah, and it does enable me to get a few more premiums in my team that I wasn't otherwise having. Now, of course, the other guys here, so there is a lot more talk on Will Ashcroft now, and my doubts on him in the earlier podcast have been eased somewhat. A lot of the players coming out just saying Ashcroft is just an absolute jet. He's being talked about above other players such as, say, Jared Berry as a midfield option. And Lachie Neale basically said, yeah, he's going to get mid-time this year. So I'm not as phased with him as I once was, and he is now my team until further notice. And of course, the other one there is going to be Will Phillips. Right now, obviously, the starting mid at that price can't really go past him. I've got some interesting ones on the pine here. So Johnson, he looks like he's fifth or sixth Fettle there at Freo. But he's getting some minutes over there and performing quite well. The other one that's a little bit more expensive, but and for that reason I'm not going to start him, but could be a great option is Erasmus. Erasmus is only 230k, but he looks to be getting some midfield minutes over there at Freo as well. So yeah, one guy that you could have a look at. Now I've gone with some cheaper options here. Joe Richards looks to be flying off the track at the Pies at the moment as well. I don't technically think that he might be... This could just be a placeholder selection at the moment because I'm not sure how he fits into their 22, and he could be a sub-risk as well or a potential sub. So not sure I want to be flying on that, but at the moment, I'm going to keep him there, see how we go. There are other options, of course, especially at about 123k. There's heaps of them in midfield. Oscar Baker, for example, is one. Yeah, you've got quite a few. And I've gone with basically almost like a donut pick here. I've heard some good things about Drury. I don't think he's going to be anything really, but 102k forward, mid forward, it's for flexibility purposes. It's really just at this stage. Again, it's a holder. What we always generally find is that right before the season starts, there's some SPP selections that come in out of nowhere, and you'll have a 102k player somewhere in your line, and that's really what I'm banking on with this lineup because I need that little bit extra cash. So I've put him in there at the moment, but really that's just, again, another placeholder, and we'll see how we go. Now here, into the rucks that we go. Now, there was talk obviously of Max Gawn hamstring injury in their intra-club yesterday. It was reported now as awareness. However, they are going to have some further scans to confirm. So nothing really to write home about there. For a second, I got a bit excited that Brodie Grundy could be a legitimate option. But no, it doesn't seem that way for me at this stage. So Marshall, though, still absolutely killing it. And the good news from Marshall is Jack Hay, well, I suppose you can say good or bad news, I'm not sure. So Tom Campbell is obviously the backup ruck option there. He won't be playing round one. They've already confirmed that. Jack Hayes was that sort of backup, that forward ruck option that they were going to use. He's also injured now and will unlikely to play round one. So that forward option is really vacant. Matt Allison, though, however, from the Saints, has been performing really well, and it looks like he might get a round one berth as that lead up forward, as that starting full forward, while Max King is injured. Now they've also said that that Marshall's the number one ruck clearly, and they are looking around for that second option right now as to when they line up with their 22, who's going to be that? It could just be a pinch hit chop out guy. It could be that Membry just comes in and puts a body on a player. They are looking for that because they don't really have a secondary ruck or a full-time second ruck available, which means you should see Marshall being an 80 to 90% ruckman on the field. And that is going to be amazing scoring and a potential VC option at times if the Saints are playing an early game. So, for that reason, Marshall for me is locked in. Darcy Cameron came off the field yesterday and didn't return to the track. There was a bit of a report on that. However, still locked into my team. The unfortunate thing with him, though, is, and I'm not sure how many people know this, but Darcy Cameron only just returned to training. So that could just be that he's just gassed and absolutely gassed. And I think that that's probably likely. And the reason I know this is I was watching Collingwood's TikTok account the other day. And it was like, the 2 minute TikTok or minute TikTok or whatever it was. And a question was posed by the media team was, who's burning up the track at the moment? And one of the boys yelled out, definitely not Darcy Cameron because we never see him around here. So he's actually only come back. And all the boys are having a joke about the fact that he's only just come back to training. Now, I'm not sure what that was for, whether that was an injury related or anything like that. I'm sure more information will come to light in the coming weeks. But he's still clearly the number one option at the Pies, and until otherwise, he's still locked into my team. Now, the forward line, again, Dunkley, yeah, that's not changing. It will never change unless he gets injured, let's be honest. One that I'm pretty confident I put into my Part 2 team is Cornelio, so he hasn't changed. Still, unless there's a clear role change or something's happened there at GWS, then we find out he's playing more forward. But yeah, I mean, average 111 since Leon Cameron got the boot. Yeah, you can't really deny him. Now, third is still going to be, he's actually changing it up. So I've gone with Rosie here at number 3. If you follow me on Twitter, CFX_1, I did a bit of an analysis on Rosie and his CBAs and how that correlates to his scoring. And basically what it says to me is if he doesn't get CBAs, he's not going to be a good scorer. But all he needs to be a very effective scorer in Supercoach is around about 50%. So even with the influx of players that are vying for mid-time, I still see a possibility that Rosie will get 50%. And that's all he needs. He averaged 111 for games that he averaged between 40 to 60% CBAs. And for over 60%, it's actually less than that. It's about 103. One of the interesting things I found in that analysis as well is that he only ever averaged over 60% on 3 separate occasions, but in runs of 3 games. So he'd have 3 games where he'd have over 60% CBAs, and then he'd go down for 3-4 games below 60%, and then he'd have 3 games in a row again at above 60%, and then he'd go down again for a few games. And it leads me to believe that he's not necessarily having the tank to increase his CBA attendance or increase that mid rotation. Now, he didn't have a preseason last year, so that could be why. And so he's having a preseason this year, so he could come back fitter, healthier, and run out games more with higher CBAs. But again, all I'm looking for him to get is that 50%. And that's because he's so impactful forward of the centre. So between him and Butters, they have some of the best, and JHF, they have some of the best forward mids in the competition. It will still be interesting to see how many they get, but I just need Rosie to get 50%. So if he comes out in that practice game and has 50% CBAs, he's locked into my team and there's nothing you can say to get him out. If he's below that, it's now some critical thinking time. I could switch that up to Butters. So Butters is obviously also on the radar there. Very similar in the fact that he operates very, very well at about 50% CBA attendances. However, he also has some really, really games without CBA attendances. So he could be more valuable to them at half forward where he still performs regardless of whether he gets in the middle or not. And that's the difference between Butters and Rosie. Butters is a more potent forward that can impact scoring heavier from the forward line, whereas Rosie is much, much better at scoring inside. So, yeah, that analysis was complete, and I do like Rosie. Now, having said that, Taranto is still definitely in my team, 100%. So this is a very sort of forward-heavy team, and I've gone that way because I'm now off Fife. So Fife's obviously, the injury to Fife. The rumour that the Fife is only playing forward, pretty much, or training in the forward group. And then in the intra-club, he comes out and basically played forward the entire match. He's not getting mid. If he gets mid-time, it'll be for 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 at an absolute most CBAs. He's not the midfielder anymore. He's letting all the other guys do the grunt work, and he's going to be playing forward. So I'm not touching Fife. I don't need a 70 average for 313k. Thank you. The other player that I had in there again was Taron Thomas, and I've just gone cold on him due to his off-field antics. I think that probably warrants at least a 1-game suspension, probably 2 or 3. So you can't have that. You can't start a guy at 295,000. It's not even going to play. So I've sort of pushed it out. Now, I do recognise that there are a lot better rookies in the forward line, and I have gone a bit deeper in my forward line because of that. I've also got flexibility, so I can move, Rosie, Taranto, Cornelio, or Dunkley, all of them into the midfield, and then push, say, Will Phillips to the Pine if I want to. So there's options there depending on who I see as the best rookie. But at this stage, I'm still going with Oscar Allen. Now, there was a report saying that he's looking to be that primary focal point and not necessarily the ruckman anymore. So he might not do a chop-out job. They could do the 2 ruck system and maybe Bailey Williams comes in and plays a second fiddle to Nick Nat. Either way, I think Oscar Allen is gold without Josh Kennedy in the team. So 210k. I know key forwards are hit and miss, and he plays for the worst team in the league, and I know all that. I still think that Oscar Allen can make 150k doing what he's doing. I rate the kid heavily, and so I'm gonna have him in my team until proven otherwise. The other one's of course still McLean. Now I didn't really see much about McLean. Apparently he's come back fit and fresh and firing, but I didn't see any reports saying he was playing midfield yet, and that sort of worries me a bit because his forward scores aren't that great. However, if he's in best 22, he should still make money regardless. So I'm not he'll still probably score average. Let's say he plays half forward with mid rotations, somewhere between 60 and 70. We know what he can do when he gets a full mid-time role, and that's average 100 plus. I think there was a time there I jumped on a few years ago. He had a pure midfield role, was averaging 110 for like the first 10 games of the season. Then I got onto him, and then such is life after that. Now I've gone a little bit deep again. So Josh Bruce is playing at centre half back as an intercepting defender role. So we'll see if he comes out in round 1 in the best 22, because that is what's now the throw up is. Okay, is he going to beat out the other guys down there? Sam Darcy is playing behind the ball, so is he going to be a round 1 contender? They've got Keith. They've got quite a few guys down there as well. Who's the other tall guy that they've got down there? That's the rookie. They've got enough options, but is Josh Bruce? Are they good? Is he good enough there? Now I know his use is fantastic, and he's got a booming boot on him, so his field kicking is actually really, really good, Josh Bruce. So they might want to get him in above, say, Liam Jones. So they've obviously got him there, but I mean I'd prefer Bruce over Jones, but don't get me wrong, Jones is a great intercepting defender. He's just not great with ball in hand. So we'll see how we go. But Josh Bruce, again, so 160k there. I could get a 123k guy here, of course, and spread the cash around. But right now, I think he's probably the best. And of course, I'm still going to go with Josh Sin as the last one, who is still currently injured, but rumoured to be the guy that they're going to replace Ammon on the wing with by Hinkley himself. So he said he's one that they're looking to get onto the wing this season, high draft pick. If he can come back fit, then he'll likely either start round 1, which may or may not happen. We'll see how we go, but definitely in the season. So at the moment he's there, but he could just be a placeholder as well. All right, guys, thanks for catching up. I know it's been a bit of a long one, but as you can see, a bit more mid-priced. If you count up these guys, I'm expecting all these guys. I'm expecting Ed Richards if I'm picking him to be a keeper. So all these guys counted up, there's actually 13 premiums in this team, along with the 2 mid-prices. So I'm pretty jacked with that. Most people are struggling to get 12 premiums. Obviously, they're much more expensive. But I like this team. I think it's well balanced. I think that it can go places. I'm not worried about any specific line with this team. In my opinion at the moment, it's getting there. It's developing, but we'll see how we go. Usually this sort of team I end up bailing out of last minute because I'm like, no, we'll just go fuel guns and Rickies and see how we go. But anyway, I hope you're having a fantastic January, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.